producing the high-quality podcast you're listening to, publishing engaging newsletter content, and posting YouTube videos, we would appreciate any financial contributions you can make. At this time, we have no advertisers, and we'd like to keep it that way. Our staff is small but growing. We can only produce a show with listener contributions from people like you. There are a couple of ways you can do that. You can sign up to be a monthly or annual subscriber at BroadwayDrumming101.com. Or help keep us caffeinated by buying us a cup of coffee or a week's worth at buymeacoffee.com/BD101. That's buymeacoffee.com/BD101.
Welcome to Broadway Drumming 101. My guest today is Juan Carlito Mendoza.
What's going on?
How are you?
I'm doing well. No complaints.
Very nice to finally get to meet you, I guess, quote unquote, in person. I got a question for you. Your middle name, where's that come from? And do people call you that or people call you Juan?
So my middle name came from my mom. My mom calls me Carlito, and only like close people call me that. And I just I wanted to kind of like revamp it and just say, you know what? People should call me that because my mom calls me that and it's special to me. So most of my close friends call me Carlito, but my real middle name is Carlos, but my mom calls me Carlito. So I say, you know what? I'm going to brand it and just, everyone have me call me Carlito because, it's a cool thing. And I think it's special, that when my mom passes away, I'm not looking forward to that, but I want that to kind of just keep going. So kind of like a remembrance for her,
So in 2012, they called you winner because you won the 2012 Guitar Center Drum Off.
Yeah, that was, I can't believe that's 10 years ago, 12 years ago, whatever.
Oh my God, you're right. Wow, man. We're getting old, man.
Yo, time is going fast.
So that particular competition, I looked up the recording on YouTube of you doing that. One thing I got to say, which is really cool, which I've never seen before, which is what made it so interesting to me to watch your performance. You turned the snare over and you played with the stick and your mouth on the snare, which is very, very creative. What made you think of that, and what made you develop that approach to your solo?
I think for me, it was just more like you can go in sound checks and you're close to the speakers and all of a sudden you get the sympathetic vibration. I was like, wow, this kind of happens naturally depending on the frequency. How can I recreate that sound, and people would freak out, because they weren't expecting it. So I was like, maybe I can incorporate it. And then essentially what you have to do is you have to kind of sing the pitch of the drum in order to get that frequency to kind of resonate. So I said, all right, I'm going to add this in after I do all the scratching stuff, all the DJ stuff into the solo. So. It worked out because there was a microphone there, so you can hear it. But and within like the stores and stuff like that, because they're smaller, it's definitely more impactful there. But being that everything was mic'd up at the finals, people just freaked out, which is cool.
The Guitar Center Drum Off, I don't know very much about the whole process. Were there a bunch of different competitions all over the country? You started in New Jersey. Tell me about that whole process.
Yeah, so it's I think it's like 4 rounds. Like it starts locally, and then so you do a local round, and then once you make it to that local round, there's like a local final, and then after that final, like all the people who won the locals go into the regions, and then the districts, what they call the districts. So then you compete against all those winners from the different stores, and then it gets even smaller, but it's like the competition gets harder. So then you go into regionals, where regionals, you'll go against dudes from because I'm in the East Coast, so you'll have guys from, let's say Ohio, Jersey, New York, Maryland, and anyone from the East Coast, essentially. I think all the way to like West Virginia. That's what they call the East Coast. So then once you get there, the regionals, then you go. I'm sorry, that's the districts. Then you go to the regionals, and then and it just gets smaller. But it's like six of us. But it's just like the creme de la creme, essentially. And then once you get past that, then you go into your finals, which is like the American Idol of like competition, essentially, where you're just kind of going up against each coast, east, west, north, south. I think northeast. Southwest and something else. I forgot what it was, but it was 6 of us, and all of those guys are killing, man. Like one of the guys now plays with like Justin Bieber, another guy, Eric Improda, who was ridiculous. Like everybody that came out of those things like has been super successful. Like even one of the guys I competed with, he just finished the Beyonce tour, so. Oh wow, okay. Yeah. And at the time when I competed against him, he was like 17, 16, and he was a killer, and now forget it, he's amazing. So it kind of goes like that. It's kind of like an American Idol thing, and you just you win a lot of money, a lot of prizes and stuff like that, which is cool. It's like 25 grand in cash and like $25,000 of prizes and other things, but you got to save your money, man, because it's all taxed. They don't tell you that, but I saved my money, paid the taxes and whatever I had left over. Essentially, the only reason I did it was because I wanted to do a down payment of my house.
Do they pay for your travel to get to each of these places? Yeah.
Especially like after a certain distance, they'll just fly you out. Especially for like the finals, like they flew us out to LA and you get a car service and all that stuff. And yeah, it's pretty cool. And then they give you like an honorarium for every day, like so you can get food and stuff like that. It was legit. It was a legit like contest, but they stopped doing it. I don't know what happened. I think it was a money issue. Honestly, they were spending a lot of money with that thing because by the finals, like they were flying out like all these A-list celebrities. Like Questlove was DJing for this event, and yeah, it was crazy. It was, but it was dope. Like everybody was there. Peter Erskine was there. Dave Elich, like Tony Royster Jr. Like everybody was out there hanging out. It was like a big deal during the time, which was real cool.
Did you do the same drum solo each time, or do you vary it?
That year, I just I started a solo, and then I wanted to build on it. But then I had no choice because we had a hurricane over here, Hurricane Irene, I think it was.
Or Sandy?
Sandy, that's what it was, Hurricane Sandy. So I had the store finals, and then we had like 2 weeks in between each thing. And then that hurricane happened, and then that got postponed, and then we had the competition, and if you won that competition, the week after was the regional. So I had no choice. I was like, you know what? I'm going to keep the first half, and if I win this round, then all I have to do is worry about the rest of it, because they give you an additional 2 minutes. So that was which was the semifinal. So I did that, and then once I did that, it was like, okay, I got a good solo. And then I had like maybe like 3 or 4 weeks to clean it all up. Like I wasn't really worrying about coming up with a solo. I was really worrying about the performance aspect of it. That way I can clean it up, as opposed to like me having to overthink certain things. It was just like, no, I just have to make sure I'm making some sort of facial expressions, showing that I'm having fun, entertaining the crowd and stuff like that. So yeah, it worked out. That's how the whole thing kind of evolved, which was nice. And I recorded everything. Like my process was really strict. I recorded everything, and every night I would just look at it and go, that needs tweaking. That's good, but how can I make this transition better? Like it was always a process. It never stopped. And it was like a 4-month process of me just doing that, which is cool. I learned a lot, and I became very analytical with certain things. And even that kind of just transferred into everything that I do now.
You were born and raised in Perth Amboy, New Jersey.
Yep. So I was in Central Jersey, essentially.
And what got you started playing drums?
I was in church. My family is very well versed in music. A lot of them don't read music, but they can play really well. Like my dad's a guitarist, and he's got an amazing ear, and he can play guitar really well. And he always nurtured me and stuff like that. And then I have family in Puerto Rico that's very musically inclined, and I started school band. They were like, join the school band, whatever. joined the school band. And then I remember dropping out of the school band like in 5th grade because I was like, I don't want to play on a practice pad, blah, blah. Ended up going to Puerto Rico that year, like December time. That's the best time to go because it's just amazing. So I went to my cousin's house, and this guy I really, really looked up to, and he was like, listen, he told me frankly, he's like, you're stupid for dropping out. We got to pay for that stuff here in Puerto Rico. All those private lessons that you get here in the States, like you got to pay this and that amount. He was like, do me a favor. I'm going to show you a video. And if this video doesn't motivate you, then I'll let you drop out. But if this video motivates you, I'm going to give it to you. So, all right, cool. I didn't know what it was, Turned it on. Here. I'm like, holy cow, you can make drums sound like that? It was a Dave Weckel Back to Basics video. It. Yeah, bro. I was like, what? I was like, what is this? And then ever since that day, like once he gave me that VHS, like I just watched that thing over and over again. And it was like my motivation. Like, I think if I would have never had that experience, I don't know if I would have taken it as serious as I do now, That's kind of how it evolved. And then I went back to the band and I started, taking things seriously. And then one of the middle school teachers, who's like one of my good friends, he's just retired. He was a student of Joe Morello. So he gave me private lessons for free. So I would walk from my middle school to the other middle school, which is across town. And then we'll have like an hour lesson. So like half of it was just hand stuff. And then the other half was all jazz, like studies, which is awesome. And then during those days, like he would just drive me home, afterwards. And like he was close with my parents. And sometimes the lesson would go like an hour and a half, all the time. And we had like journals and we took everything seriously. So, especially like, because I was getting it for free. He didn't have to do that, for me. And I tell him all the time, I'm indebted for you for life, and he's like, oh, Juan, stop, whatever. But like, that was like one of my heroes. So I just studied all the way through high school, did all the, marching band stuff and all that. Then I got into like drum corps for a little bit. So I would go to those auditions and like Tom Onks would get, pissed off at me because he'd want me on, but I'm like, dude, I can't afford it, And during that time, it was like the internet was kind of happening. So it's like you would go to those camps to get music so you can learn, new stuff, new warm-ups that were coming out. So that's why I would go to those camps. So I ended up doing that, for a couple of years, won individuals and all that stuff. I used to play on my practice pad like 7-8 hours a day. Like it was insane. Like that was my phase where I just developed hand stuff for a long time. And at the same time I would play a little drum set, but I always knew like, let me get my hands first. If I can get all the technique kind of aspect going, then all I have to do is kind of change my approach to thinking wise to the drum set, because I always played drum set. It wasn't like I just played snare and that was it. I always played, snare, but I was also playing a lot of drum set at church, in different events. So I always had that kind of balance, which was nice.
Did you see yourself playing for somebody like Chick Corea's Electric Band, or did you see yourself playing for some big pop star, the Backstreet Boys, whatever, back in the day?
Yeah, for me, it was mostly like I always wanted to play with Michel Camilo. Like that's one guy that I always wanted to play with, because I listened to a lot of Horacio Hernandez growing up, and it was just like, oh man, I would love to be on that gig. Or Spiral Gyro was another one, because my dad used to listen to Spiral Gyro when I was a kid all the time. As far as like super big acts, like Sting would have been dope, just like, I'm trying to think who else. Michael Jackson would have been a cool one, stuff like, or Stevie Wonder, that would have been a fantastic one. But I personally, I always wanted to be a player and a teacher at the same time. So for me, it was like, I went to school to be a band director, essentially. Like, band director wasn't like my backup plan. Like, that's what I wanted to do, because I knew I was going to get benefits and, security of that. And then I wanted to also be like, hopefully a badass player at the same time, so that after school, I can go do whatever I wanted to do, and, if you weren't getting the calls, at least you had this, as a security blanket. And then also, like, I wanted to retire early, man. Like, quite frankly, you know, as a teacher, you can retire early, you know, and still get all the benefits, you know.
Did you wind up doing that?
Yes, I'm a middle school band director now, and so I taught at the high school for 6 years. So like I graduated college, and I essentially had a gig like before I graduated college. I interviewed and everything, and it was in the same district that I grew up in, which is rad. So I knew everybody. So I was hired like as a sub before I graduated, and then I took over like from like May all the way to June. And then I got my degree, and then September, I was already like the head band director. So this is like my year 20, you know, in the school district, which is rad. So essentially, I have like 5 more years. I can get a full pension, and then I could retire. I got in at a good time. I could retire essentially at 55. So with full benefits and all that stuff. So I'm like, bro, and people are like, oh, you should leave. I'm like, why? I got kids now, you know. I got kids, I got a wife, I got a family, I got security, like, you know. So I always thought about like the end game too, you know, because I knew it was like, if I go the gigging route, it's like, how am I going to save up, you know, if I have a family? Because I always wanted a family, you know. So I always thought ahead, you know, and I always live within my means too. Like, I don't spend a lot of money on dumb stuff, you know, like people that spend like $500 on a pair of sneakers, and I'm like, why, you know, like, and then they don't want to crease them. I'm like, how are you going to walk? I don't get it, man.
People don't want to crease their sneakers? Really? I never, because they don't.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Never
because
heard of that.
It's crazy. So like, I don't know too much about this stuff, but like, they'll wear them so they can resell them. But if they have creases on it, like people, you know, they'll just be like, oh, I lost its value a little bit. It's weird, man. I don't know, man. Like being in middle school, like I can stay within what the heck is going on, what's current, you know, with the kids.
Yeah.
And it's just like they're into some weird stuff, but it's a big deal, you know, like people pay like $1,000 for a pair of sneakers and stuff like that. So for me, I was never like that. It was just like I always lived within my means, and you know, I had other goals besides my outside appearance. You know, like I just wanted, like, all right, I want to be financially stable, and you know, have my wife be cool, have the, you know, my future family, which at this point is my family, be good. You know, so that way I can retire early and I can spend more time with them when they get a little older, when they really, really need me. You know, especially when they turn like teenagers and stuff like that. So
a little bit. How did you get connected to Carter, and what brought you to the whole world of Broadway?
Oh man, this is a weird story, but I think it's important. So again, like I said, I'm still a middle school band director. We had a change of administration, and when that change happened, it was like, all right, Juan, you're going to teach general music now and not band. Band would be towards, you know, extracurricular. And throughout my whole tenure at that point, I was just teaching band. So anyways, at that point, I was a little depressed, man. I'm not going to lie. I was like, man, like, I've never taught general music before. You're slapping this on me a week before school starts. Yeah, it's crazy. So it was like, so I had a combination of that stuff, and I kind of vented a little bit on social media, especially on Facebook. So anyways, so I was friends with Andres Ferrero. So he was like, hey man, come to the show. At that point, that's when Hamilton just started. So this is like 7 years ago. He was like, hey man, you want to come check out the show? I said, bro, I would love to just come check the show, just to see just to hear music, you know, great quality music, and just get away from my environment. That was my whole intention. And it was cool that he even, like, you know, offered that to me, especially at that point. Like, Hamilton, you couldn't get a ticket. So I went, watched the show, cool, whatever. And then a couple weeks later, I was talking to Carter on Instagram. That's how I met Carter, was Instagram. He was commenting on my videos, whatever. I'm commenting back, whatever. And I was like, hey man, I just want to go see Andres, you know, show. I would love to come see your show just to hang. I just want to see what it is. I didn't talk about no subbing or any of that. It was just mostly to get my mind clear from what was happening at work at the time. So I went there, and I was like, that's cool, man. We hung out, you know, because we were friends at that point. Hung out, boom. nothing of it. I said, thank you again. Went home, nothing. So, and again, I didn't go into it thinking anything. So a couple months later, Carter hits me up. He's like, hey, man, let's hang, man. I was like, all right, cool. I'll come up. He's like, come watch the show. I was like, all right, cool. Watch the show, hung out. And then afterwards, we went to lunch at some pizzeria, which is off the hook. So he was like, hey, man, you would kill this. And I'm like, oh, thanks, man. He was like, would you want to do this? And I said, yeah, that'd be cool, you know? So again, I didn't go into it with no intentions. I just went to go hang out with my bud Carter, and that was it. So he was all right, cool. And this is like a little bit before COVID, maybe like 2019, like late 2019. So then he was all right, cool. I'm going to hit you up in a couple months because I need subs. So I was like, all right, cool. Hit me up. He was like, all right, come watch the show, whatever. He was like, here's the book. Make copies of the book. Make copies. I started learning the show probably for like 2 months or something like that. And then he was like, all right, we're going to put you in March something. I forgot what it was. And boom, everything got shut down. He was like, oh, we should only be out for like 2 weeks, you know? And then after that, we'll get you in. I was like, all right, cool, whatever. And then you already know what happened. So then once he said, hey, Juan, I don't know when we're going to go back. I don't know what's going on, honestly. But as soon as, you know, everything opens up, I'll let you know. I said, cool. So I put the book away for a while because at that point I didn't know nobody knew what was going on, right? So then he hits me up, let's see, August of 2 years ago, right before the whole thing opened up again. He's like, hey, we're going to open up again. Our first date is September, blah, blah, blah. He's like, how fast can you have this show learned? Sir, I'll have it learned in, I don't know, like a month or two or whatever. He's like, cool. He's like, everybody moved out. Like all his subs were out. Like all his subs that he had either moved out of the city or they got, like Grant was one of them. Grant got his own show with the Neil Diamond show. And then, and he said, I got no subs at all. So he's like, this is the perfect time to come in. I was like, all right, cool. So busted my tail. The cool thing was I was the only sub. So I was the one giving Carter a break, which was nice. So I was getting all the shows, you know?
So tell me about your first time going in to sub at the Lion King. What was your experience like?
Oh man, it's probably like the most stressful thing you ever do. Just cause like first it's a big show. Like it's not just like, all right, I'm gonna play with a click. This is one thing. The Lion King, 95% of that show is all conducted. It's not even like clicks. Like you have a couple clicks, like in the beginning, at the end, maybe like 2 in the middle, but everything else is all like you're watching the conductor. So you have that aspect. And then on top of that, it's like the setup is pretty big. It's pretty immense. So you have to remember to turn the electronics on, turn them off. You got to know how to play a bass drum correctly, like a concert bass drum. There's a microphone on wood blocks that has a mic mute on it. So like you got to remember to turn that thing on and off for a couple songs, selections. And then you got to deal with also the setup. Like it's just like, it's not your setup. So it's like that setup is Carter's setup. It's ergonomically correct for him. And I'm taller than Carter. So you have that kind of thing happening. So that's before you even play a note, you know, in the show. So the cool thing, at least with Carter, was like, he was like, I was like, can I just like move the throne down a little bit? Because if not, because Carter sits kind of high. So if not, I won't be able to hit a rim shot. So he was like, oh yeah, it's cool. That's cool. He was cool with that. I know some places it's like you can't move anything. So with him, at least I was able to kind of adjust the snare height and the throne. But my first experience was crazy because every time I went to go watch the show, it was the main conductor. And then that day, I went to the afternoon show to see Carter play, and then I was supposed to be scheduled for the night show on a Saturday night. So the afternoon show was completely other conductor that I had never seen before in my life. And I was like, oh my God, this guy conducts completely different than this person. And then when I was scheduled, it was another conductor that I've never seen conduct before. And that was my first show. And the cool thing is like, she was really clear with everything. So it made my night a little bit easier. But again, it's like you're going in there with the unknown because you don't know who you're playing with. You don't know if the people are going to like you. You don't know if how you're going to gel with and it's a big orchestra, like 24, 25 people. So you have to dictate. There's times where you have to kind of dictate the tempo, and there's times where you have to blend with everyone in there. And the only way to really know that is to get the experience and do it. So you can prepare all you want. You can watch the same video all you want. You can watch, you can listen to the audio as much as you want. But until you do the show, it's completely different because everything changes on stage because 95% of it is conducted. It's not like, everything's a click track. And it's like, all right, how long each song is, whatever. It's not like that. So you have that kind of going into you. Plus you have to be able to make sure your tempos match with 5 other percussionists on top of that, because you have 2 on, is it 5? It's 4 other percussionists. There's 2 on my left side, and there's Rolando and Junior on the top balcony as well. Plus you have a string section, and you got woodwinds, and you have whatever the heck is going on stage. So it's probably the most nerve-wracking thing I've ever done, because you don't know until you experience it. Like you think you're ready, but as soon as you experience it, you're like, oh my God, like this is a different beast. And then the worst part is that you essentially have one shot to make a good impression, and you got to sound like Carter McLean at the same time. So
that's not easy to do.
Dude, I'm telling you. And it's all like you have one shot to impress, whoever's conducting, and hopefully you do a good job, and get the call back, So it was insane, Clayton. It's not easy. I tell people all the time, it's the most nerve-wracking thing I've ever done.
So when you were introduced to the conductor on your first day, tell me about that story again.
So essentially, so Carter was like, hey, this is Juan Carlito. He's going to be subbing on the show. He's going to do a great job. And the conductor looked at me and smiled, and he said, and he laughed. He was like, we'll see. And then he just walked away. I was like, oh my God, what did I get myself into? So, but now knowing him, I'm like, okay, he's just that kind of guy. Like he's a stickler. But like once you get through that thick layer of skin, you're just like, he's a softie, for some things. So
when you subbed your first show, you got done, you're like, okay, I got it done. Did you get a lot of notes? And how did you deal with getting those notes from the conductor?
So the cool thing was, right, I kind of go, all right, I went into it like, all right, I'm going to get notes. Like you can't go into it and go, I'm going to have a perfect show. So I was like, okay. I was expecting like this real long page of notes or whatever. And I got like maybe like 3 notes, something real small compared to like what other people get. So I was like, oh my God, this is fantastic. It was very productive, which is cool. Like she came in and she was like, hey, just play this a little bit louder. My prep for this is this, etc. I do my thing a little bit different than, such and such conductor. So just be aware of that. And the cool thing for me was like the woodwind guy, Dan Weiss, I remember hearing him, saying that was his first show, and he like stood up and he gave me a thumbs up, and I was like, okay, I think I did a good job, which was really cool because he's there from the beginning. So, he's been there with Tommy and Carter and everybody. So, I felt good about it. I was like, okay, cool. And I knew going into it, like, I always have to improve every time I play. Like, I just can't be satisfied with what I did because every day is going to be different, and every conductor is going to give me some sort of different note, And it could be minor, it's just like, just hit that cymbal a little bit harder, or it's just like, don't hit the bass drum so hard, or, it's just like little subtle things. But that was the key. Like, I just didn't want it to be like a catastrophe. It was like, oh my God, like, you really need to work on this song, whatever. It was just like minor things. And it was cool. Like, you kind of have to go into it like with an open mind and go, I'm going to get notes, and it has nothing to do with your ego. It's just all about the show. Like, you got to make the show sound good, make it sound like Carter is there, and whatever they say, you just say yes. Even if you feel like maybe you're right, just say yes, because that's the name of the game. It's just say yes, yes ma'am, yes sir, and you fix it the next time. and be intentional when you fix it, because they're looking for it to see if you actually did listen or not. I've seen people like not listen to certain things, and like the next show they're gone. It's been crazy, Clayton. It's been crazy. Like when I say it's cutthroat out there, like it's cutthroat. I've never experienced anything like it.
When you went in for the second show, you're like, I got this. I did pretty well the first time, and then were you like, okay, I got it, and then made serious mistakes during your second show, or were you consistent?
I was stressed, dude. All I did was listen to Lion King for like 5-6 months. That's all I did, and just like listen and try to fix things. And sometimes like Carter would go live, and I would just watch him to see what he was doing, like during his live. Like he'll go on Instagram live, just to kind of. And I was like, okay, he's approaching it this way. And I was taking notes, like I wasn't just watching the live just to watch this live. It was just more like, all right, what is he doing? Oh, okay, he's using this mallet. I kept using the wrong mallet or whatever, like, because there's a lot of implements there. Like there's sticks, there's dowels, then there's like a bunch of other mallets. And it's like, sometimes you get freaked out and like, oh my God, I picked the wrong one up. And that was another thing too. Like that was one of the big things. It's just mostly like the choreography of the show. Like what mallets to pick up, because he'll have like, for example, like hot rods, which are harder, and then he'll have these things called dem sticks, or like bundle sticks, but those are softer. So depending on the song, like if you pick the wrong implement, it's like it changes the whole vibe, or you're gonna have to adjust your whole touch to try to emulate the softer touch or the harder stick or mallet. So. It's a lot of orchestration as far as like the choreography. I think that's the hardest part, is the choreography of the whole thing, and just making sure you remember to pick up the right mallet, I gotta turn a microphone on for a wood block. You know what I mean? Like it's like details. Small details like that, Yes. And literally like in my book, I have so many notes on, like, it's not like crazy, but it's just like certain things. Like I'll say, turn the click up all the way on this song or whatever, because if I don't do that, things can fall apart. And then on top of that, some of the clicks have different levels of like volume levels. It's crazy. It's so like I got that detailed where it was just like, all right, this click is softer. I have to raise the click all the way on this one. This one's loud. And then sometimes it changes. Like, for example, like some of the clicks that were soft, all of a sudden, a week later, they're freaking loud, and your ears are just going, pow, pow. You're like, what is going on? So there's always something to challenge you in the show. But now it's kind of starting to, after like almost 2 years, it's starting to kind of ease a little bit more, which is nice.
Damn, after 2 years, it's finally starting to ease.
Because the show's that intense. It really is. And it's not even about the notes, man. It's playing this music authentically. Like that's the whole vibe, and you can attest to this, like when you sub, like there's so many people in and out. Every night is a different feel, and you have to adjust your feel to all those people that are coming in and out, And the same thing happens with the actors, like it's all a different vibe. Their timings are different, especially when you have understudies and everything going on. So like I said, like you have to go in it like alert, and you have to always listen, because you don't know what the heck is going on. Something catastrophe, like some sort of catastrophe can happen on that stage, and you got to shut everything off. So it's crazy. It's not easy.
There's one piece of advice that you would give to drummers that are interested in playing Broadway shows, especially being a sub on a Broadway show. What's that one piece of advice?
I would say do a lot of community theater. I did a lot of community theater growing up. And even before I did Lion King, I was part of like a pretty big productions down here where every summer it was like 3 or 4 shows. And the great thing about it was like you get to learn about setups and how to like really manage those setups and how to be meticulous with your music. I think that's one thing. Another thing is just like learn as many styles as possible, because Broadway's just not like all 2-beat stuff anymore. It's like you got to know how to play rock, you got to know how to play jazz, you got to know how to play African music, everything. It's just you never know what you're going to get called for. You know, I got called to play with Lebo, you know, like at for the 25th anniversary concert for Lion King. And like I played with like a guy from Madagascar for a long time, so I can like adjust the feels and stuff. And thank God I did that, because that was the vibe. And it was like, oh my God, if I didn't do this, I would have been dead. You know, I probably would have never got hired. And that's where I met Michael Aarons. The biggest thing, try to do as much musical theater as possible, try to get as much experience as possible, and be open. Like, don't think you know everything, because you're going to learn something all the time. No matter what show you do, no matter how big, you know, the arena is, or how big or small the show is, learning how to watch a conductor conduct is huge. And even like watching a conductor play while he's playing keyboard, or he or she is playing keyboard, that's a different skill too. So there's a lot, but I would say that, you know, like if you're trying to get into Broadway, try to do as many shows as possible. You know, even if it's like at high schools or whatever, like try to do as many productions as possible, because some of those books are like really well written.
We've all made mistakes in life. What is one of those mistakes you've made professionally, especially when it comes to Broadway, that you'll never do again?
Man, that's a really good question. I would say never underestimate how hard a song is, or selection. Like, for example, people will be like, for example, so a lot of people are like, oh, you play a Hakuna Matata. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, Hakuna Matata is tough, man. There's a lot of conducting things that happen. I remember watching Carter and going, okay, cool, I can do that. And then when Hakuna Matata came out, I was like, all right, cool, let's hear the song. And I saw all the stuff that was going on. I was like, oh my God, like you can't underestimate any selection. Like you can't go into autopilot, because you can get lost quick. Like if you go into autopilot and if you miss something, especially if it's the first couple shows, it's over for you. Like you just get dirty looks. So I never really underestimated anything, but the one regret I do have is just, I wish I had a little bit more, and this is probably everybody, a little bit more time to prepare. Just a little bit more, because I don't think you're ever truly prepared for a show, you know? Because the experience is different. At least at Lion King, is definitely different, because it's all, like a majority of it's conducted. So that's just, but I don't think it's not a regret of mine, just because it's like you'll never be ready. You know, it's like you just have to go and do it. You know, after a certain time, it's like, all right, you've listened to all this music and you think you know it, but it's like you go into it and go, all right, I have to do it to really know if I know it or not. And even to this day, it's like now I'm starting to feel like I understand the show, not just the drum book. I understand the show. So I think that's the biggest thing. It's not just the drum book. It's like understand the show and how your part fits in within the show, which is a big deal. Because I'll get, like, for example, I used to get notes about certain things that were happening on stage, but I didn't know what was going on stage. Like we had a stage monitor, but it wasn't like HD. It was like real blurry. So I didn't know what was going on. And now we have like a HD kind of monitor. And it's like, oh, that note that person said 2 months ago makes sense now, because I see what's going on stage. So being able to kind of just like engulf the whole show and understand what's going on stage, I think takes it to the next level too. So
one thing I always like to do if I'm going to sub on a show or even be a part of a show, I want to see the show from the audience's perspective, because I want to see it in context. And when you're behind the drum set, you don't really get to see or understand, because if you do a cymbal scrape, there's a reason why you're doing a cymbal scrape, not because it sounds cool. It's because somebody might be, moving their hand like this, or gesturing in a certain way to make it seem like there's magic coming out. So that cymbal scrape means something. When you prepared for The Lion King, what exactly did you do? Did you have a conductor cam and the audio, and did you sit at home and set up your set like Carter's? Like, what did you do to prepare for your time at The Lion King?
So the cool thing is, like, I'm blessed to have, like, I have my own studio. So I had everything Carter had. The only thing I didn't have was like a concert bass drum, but I mounted like a bass drum to kind of emulate where it was. But I did have, there was a conductor's video, and then there was audio too. But they changed certain things. Like, so for example, the conductor video is pretty old. So there are certain selections that won't go with that video because they updated the music to something else. So, yeah, I tried to get as many. The one thing that I really did was try to listen to actors' cues, like lines, to really know, okay, after this person says this line, I know I have to come in sometime soon, or next. So I wrote a lot of stage cues down on my book, which is nice. And then I also wrote like, okay, there's a prep for this song, that's not the downbeat of one. That's the prep for whatever song it is. So stuff like that. Like, to me, I think I took more time writing a lot of details and just like analyzing a lot of things. And then also going to see Carter, and I was just like, look at him and go, okay, he's playing these ghost notes really soft, or there's no ghost notes on this song, so you can't add this. And then I started seeing there was tendencies too, like Carter plays a lot of certain songs, he plays the same every time. So it was like certain fills. I transcribed fills, and I was like, all right, I'm playing everything like Carter, and just, I did that for a long time. And then when I would just practice for a long time, because my studio is soundproof. So when everybody was sleeping, I was practicing till like 1 o'clock in the morning, and then go to bed, go to work, come back, practice. That's all I did. Like when I say all I did was Lion King for like 5 months, that's all I did. Like, that's all I practiced, because I just wanted. You had one shot, like legit. You have one shot to make a good impression, and it was my first and only Broadway show. So it was like, man, I'm getting in, and it's the show on Broadway, and I'm like, and I got one shot to make a good impression. So I took it super serious, man, and I was very meticulous with everything, and just listened to things over and over again. And I wouldn't go on. Like, I would practice like one selection, and then go, okay, I have that, and then then I would listen to the next one. Cool. And then I will always go back and go, okay, what's the transition from here to here? And then go to the next selection. And I always went back. I always reviewed everything that I previously learned, as opposed to me going, I'm just going to learn the whole first act. And it's going to take you forever to learn everything. Just take small chunks, and I would just chunk bigger chunks, and then go, okay, I got the whole first act. And then Carter would be like, hey, how you doing? I'm like, all right, cool. I got the whole first act. I'm working on the second act now, to make sure that I understand everything that's going on. And in the meantime, I was still going to watch Carter play the shows, just to make sure that I was transcribing things correctly, and to make sure that he was actually playing the fills the same way all the time, And then he would just, and I would bother Carter and be like, hey man, do you play this the same way? He's like, no, you have a little bit of liberty here on this, but majority of it was all like, I would just transcribe things. And it was just very meticulous. Same process as like the drum off, man. It was just very, very meticulous, and just do things over and over again. And I would just listen to the music all the time. And I wouldn't skip the tracks. I would listen to everything to make sure, because it was like, I got to sit through a whole, 2.5 hour show. I got to make sure I know the whole thing, and not just the drum parts.
You live in New Jersey, and you have to get to, where is it now? 45th Street.
Mm-hmm.
And in Times Square. Tell me about the practical implications or practical aspects of being a musician coming from New Jersey, trying to get to New York and trying to get there on time. Do you drive? Do you take the train? And what should people know about traveling into New York City at this particular moment?
Oh man, you got to expect the unexpected when you're going into the city. So I leave super early. And the cool thing is, because Carter has like essentially like an apartment in there. So I'll go in there and hang. I usually get there like 2 hours before the show. So like I would go, because sometimes you'll get delays, and it's just like, it could be an hour delay, or it could be a 2 hour delay, because of weather or something like that. So I want to try to get there as soon as possible. So I'll usually go home, take a shower, change my clothes, and then catch like a 4 o'clock train, and then get to the city, which is an express train that I take. It's like only takes me like a half hour to get there if it's an express train, which is nice. And then if I leave from my hometown, it's like an hour straight, but I normally just like to leave really early. So I'll get there, I'll go from work, change, and then go straight into the city. I'll get there usually by 5 o'clock. if it's a 7 o'clock show, same thing. Or 8 o'clock show, I usually try to get there really early. That way I'm not stressing myself out, because there was one time where I had a Saturday show and the train just stopped, like on the tracks. They're like, all right, we're going to be delayed for like an hour and a half. I was like, what? I freaked out. And this was like one of my first shows. Like, I called Carter. I'm like, Carter. And he heard, like the person announcing it. He was like, dude, can you get out the train and take like a car there? And I was like, I can't even get out the train. I don't know what's happening. So, and he was on the way to like a wedding or something like that. So I was like, all right, Carter, I'll call you back in a bit once I get an update. And like, thank God, like the train like left maybe like 15, 20 minutes later, because there was a train that was stuck in front of us. So they somehow found the train out. But I tell people all the time, like, if you're going to go sub, like, leave early, try to get there as soon as possible, because you don't know what's going to happen. Especially like last week, it was raining, and the subways were all like jacked up. Like, you couldn't get in and out. So, like for me, I'll take it into Penn Station, and then I'll take like the A train, C or E train, and it's my first stop, and I'm there, which is nice. So even if the subway is not working, I'll just walk, 11 blocks, from Penn Station. So it's not a big deal. But I tell people all the time, like, leave early, because you never know. Something always happens, like somebody will jump in front of a train. Like, it's like real stuff, like stuff you see in the movies. It really happens in New York. So people are crazy out here, man. So leave early. And the good thing is, like, I can take a train, I can take a bus to Port Authority, which is nice. So I do have options. My last resort is to drive into the city. So I haven't had to do that yet. If I have to, then I will. But if I do drive, I got to leave really early, because if not, it'll take me about an hour to get there, at least, depending on traffic. Because it depends on the traffic into, Lincoln Tunnel or Holland or whatever it is. So, but I don't drive in. I just take the train.
You have a lot of young people that you work with on a regular basis. The drummers that may be looking up to you or looking up to other people, have any of them expressed interest in playing in musicals, or are they looking to play with Taylor Swift or Beyonce?
Oh yeah, you get a mix of them. I think I get people hitting me up about trying to get on. They're like, hey, can I get on Lion King? I'm like, bro, you talking to the wrong guy. Like, I don't own that chair. Like, I sub, on the show, I'm there pretty often, but that's not my show. So I just tell people like be patient with the whole process. Like, don't go crazy. Don't be annoying about it and go, hey, can I take you, let me go see your show, blah. Like, I'm sure those people get that all the time, all the chair holders, and I'm sure like that question gets annoying, after a certain time. So don't rush yourself into it. People will know, like if they're hearing like, oh, this guy can play, like, they know. It's social media. They'll be like, okay, they'll reach out to you if they need you, essentially. But I would just say, like, just be patient with, if it's meant to be, it's going to happen. It really is. You're going to meet the right people, and it's going to happen organically. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen if you force yourself into it. And if you do force yourself into it and you're not prepared, like, then what was the point of that? So just for me, it's just mostly just, I tell people all the time, like, just be prepared, study as many styles as possible, and be a nice person. Like, nobody wants to work with a jerk or somebody who doesn't say hi to you. I clean up after myself all the time. Even if I'm using the bathroom, the sink is wet, I'll, dry everything. And before I leave, even if Carter's room was like a little messy before going in, I'll clean up his room, just to make sure that everything is nice and tidy. Because, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, that's the place where you work. That's his office, So, like, you don't want to walk back into your office and the whole place is in shambles, So, just stuff like that. Like, be a good person and just have manners, and if somebody talks to you, like, look them in the eye, and just, be respectful, and be respectful of everybody around you.
We met through social media. I think you commented about a post, I don't know how many months ago, but it was about subbing, or, one of the things I posted from my Broadway Drumming 101 website. And I looked you up, and I see that you have done teaching for many, many years. You have online courses, you have books. What is it about your approach to social media that you enjoy about it? And what is your intention in posting stuff on Instagram or YouTube?
Yeah, like honestly, my biggest intention with the whole social media thing, especially when I started in YouTube, it was just mostly to give people access to stuff they didn't have access to, especially in like third world countries, just visiting third world countries with people that didn't have the resources, to buy like, let's say a DVD or anything like that. So for me, it was just a way to give back. Honestly, it was just like, all right, I got all these ideas, let's just give back, and just nothing in return. You know what I mean? If somebody subs, awesome. But it was mostly like just to get out there and just and to help me work on my teaching aspect too. Just like my speech and just all that, because I was doing it every day in a different environment. When you're in a group setting, but when you're doing it like one-on-one with like a camera right there, that's a different vibe completely. Because especially like once you see that red light go on the first time, like all of a sudden you just start stuttering for no reason, so it was a learning experience, but essentially my whole thing was just mostly like, let me help like third world country people that can't afford private lessons, that can't get this information anywhere, or just give access to people, to my head, to my brain, because people always ask, how do you do this? How do you do that? And I would take notes and like questions that people would ask me. I'm like, all right, cool. I'm going to make a lesson on that. Or, whatever, or I know I've been seeing social media people, they'll say like, man, they want to learn about traditional grip or something. Let's say, and it's like, all right, let me do a series on that, just to help people out. Essentially, that was my whole goal with social media. And then once kind of like the whole drum off thing kind of happened, it was more like you kind of saw it like they made it like, all right, you have a social media, it's all about business. How are you branding yourself? And then it kind of went into like that kind of vibe for a little bit. But you never forget, like for me, I never forgot why I started it. Like for me, it was mostly like, I got to help people out, and now seeing like, because the internet's so big now, it's like, man, seeing kids from Africa play and seeing all these kids from all these third world countries, playing, killings, like those people would succeed here without a doubt. We're just blessed to be in the situation we're in, but if those people were here in this situation, it'll be lights out, so it's a beautiful thing, so for me, it's just mostly like get my projects out, and when I'm out of this world, hopefully I left something for somebody, some sort of anthology to help people out, and that was the whole point of writing the books and stuff too. It's just like, all right, I want to leave something here, when I'm gone, it's like, all right, cool. I have something to leave, on this earth, hopefully, a small mark.
So tell me about the books you have right now.
So I have two books. It's called Rudiment Creativity, Volume 1 and Volume 2. Volume 2 just came out probably like 2 weeks ago. I had it done, but it just like really released it 2 weeks ago. And essentially those books I didn't even want to write. It was mostly like I was going to write a book on hybrid rudiments on the drum set. And I said, if I write this book, this really doesn't make sense if people don't have an understanding of the basic rudiments. So I said, instead of writing like one big rudiment book, I said, let's split it up into two categories. So I split it up to the singles and doubles category, or paradiddles, the rolls and paradiddle rudiments. And then book 2 is all the flam and drags stuff. That way it's a little bit more attainable. I never liked books that were like, 120 pages, because you never really got through them. It was just like, the books that I got through were like, for example, like Future Sounds, Garibaldi stuff, where it was like pretty thin, but it was like filled with like lots of meat in it. Same thing with like New Breed. New Breed was like my favorite book. It's like, I wanted it to kind of go that route. So I was like, all right, once I did book 1, I was like, I have to do book 2. So that's the only reason I have that. So now, essentially, now that that's over, I kind of want to just get into other things. Like I want to write like a hand warm up book. I want to write like a groove book, it just has like various grooves and stuff like that. And then get the website up and running with different courses and stuff like that. So I just don't have the time to keep up with everything, unfortunately, because social media is a beast that you have to keep up with. I have a family, I have kids, all that. And then I'm at Lion King a lot. So it's like, I don't have time for any of that. as far as like recording more content on this website, so, but I'm working on getting some more live streams happening. So I bought like this new mixer and it's sounding phenomenal. I'm setting everything up tonight. So I got the video production setting up tonight. The audio stuff I set up last night and I was stoked about it. So now I'm going to start offering like live master classes on certain things. And so I got a lot of plans. I got a lot of things that I have on my whiteboard. I just don't have the time yet to do it. And that's what benefits me as far as being an educator. Is like once I retire at 55 or whatever I decide to do, I could just focus on that. You know what I mean?
The people that are listening to this or watching this, think long term, because as good as it was for me in my 30 years of playing drums in New York City, playing all kinds of stuff, being on a Tony Awards twice and having, 5 different, maybe now 6 different musicals and cast recordings, it's great. But you got to think about all the other things that come with being an adult. So I admire your forethought and your long-term thinking. And now you're thinking about even longer-term thinking by, like you said, just giving back to people by just posting stuff online, showing people what you do. Now you're going to have these online courses and live streaming events. If I had a thing with some applause here, I'd give you a round of applause.
Thanks, man. And it's just, you see certain things in your life and you just kind of go, I don't want that for me. I think for me, that was the biggest motivation. It was just like, all right, I've seen people struggle so much, and it's a struggle, but a lot of it is just like irresponsibility as far as like people just spending money on stuff they don't need, like even like, and it's hard to even say this, like even schooling sometimes is a waste of money, like as far as like college is not for everybody. I tell people all the time, I'm like, it's not for everybody. Like a degree doesn't necessarily do you any good for certain things, So, and we always like, if my daughters want to be plumbers, electricians, I'm like, let's go. You always need the trades, like I wish I knew how to do all the carpentry stuff, sometimes it's just like save myself money, but also it's a skill that's important. We need that stuff. And I tell people all the time, there's nothing wrong with having a day job. You need a day job. Like to survive this industry at a certain point, you're going to need to kind of like just man up and just go, all right, I got to get a job. Be smart, be responsible, and just think about like the future. I think this is the biggest shock for me starting this whole Broadway thing was the amount of shows that have closed since I started subbing. I'm so dumbfounded. Like everyone looks at Carter and it's like, yo, Carter has like, this is like a unicorn gig. Like he really has a unicorn gig. I'm like, this whole Broadway thing, like I've seen so many shows close down I've been doing it for almost 2 years at this point, and I'm just shocked. Because when I started the show, your show was just closing down, Ain't Too Proud. And since then, there's been other shows in that theater that have just closed down so fast. And I'm like, don't put all your eggs in this one basket, because Broadway is a beast. And it's all about money. And how much money is that venue making? If you're not making it, the next show's in, and just be smart. It's not for everybody. I tell people it's not for everybody. It's not all, it's not all rainbows there,
You have to really think about stability, and you can go from show to show, but there's a lot of time where you're not working. And what do you do in those situations? How are you going to make ends meet? Mm. So I've learned you have to find other ways of earning income, because relying on Broadway solely to do that is not the most wise thing to do. So be a school teacher and
no, and listen, whatever you do, make sure you love it, because, and that was one thing too, like, and I'll end it here, is essentially like, I never wanted to be that miserable teacher. Like, I remember walking in And I'm usually a chill dude. And then just seeing like teachers miserable because they didn't have coffee or this and that, and they take it out on the kids. I'm like, why are you here? Like, no wonder the kids don't like you. You know, it's make sure whatever it is that you do, like, love it. Don't do it for a paycheck, please. I know some things you need for this paycheck, but if you're super miserable, find something else to do. Like,
yeah,
there's nothing wrong with working at Costco. Costco is like one of the best, places
Starbucks.
to work. Any of those places where you can get good benefits, and don't take for granted those benefits, because the one day you say, oh, I don't need those benefits, and you stop paying, all of a sudden you're in the hospital and now you're stuck. So think about the benefits, because you never know. Insurance is big. So if you say yes to something, make sure you do it with excellence, because you never know what other door is going to open up for you. So, but like I said, man, I'm blessed. Like, for real, like, anytime I get to play a show, I love going in there and playing the show and helping people out too, because like as a sub, you are helping the chair, to get a break, or that person has an emergency. I remember, getting called and like, hey man, can you do this? Like Carter's dog was sick or something like that at like 6 a.m. and it's like, yeah, man, I'll be there. Like stuff like that, like you get to help people out, because they're looking for that. So that's the last thing I'll say. Make sure your yes is a yes and your no a no, because if you call and cancel and you start doing that too often, you ain't getting called back. So be responsible.
Where can people find you on social media?
So social media, just type my name on Instagram, Juan Carlito Mendoza. Same thing with Facebook. I got a TikTok, which I don't I do some posting there, but it's Juan Carlito Mendoza, but I have a number 1 at the end because somebody has the other tag. And then my website is carlitomendoza.com. I
really appreciate you being on my podcast and explaining a lot of things that you did, because your perspective is unique, is different. Again, I love the practical nature of the things that you've said, and hopefully a lot of people learned from what you had to say.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Don't forget to subscribe to the Broadway Drumming 101 YouTube page. You'll find more content that isn't featured on the podcast or on the Broadway Drumming 101 Instagram page. Make sure when you subscribe to the YouTube page, you click on the button to be notified when a new video is published. Be sure to visit our new shop at merchandise.broadwaydrumming101.com. Stay tuned for more.